Welcome to Missions Life, where we share resources and encouragement for current missionaries, future missionaries, and those praying for missionaries. Missions can be hard, and we want to help you face the challenges of life, leadership, and ministry. We want your life to bear fruit for the gospel wherever you are. I'm Kyle Farran, here with my co-host and wife, Heather. Well, today we wanted to talk about furlough. We've been able to have about 8 furloughs in our missions career, and furlough is one of those things that is a wonderful thing to be able to reconnect with people, but it can also be a challenging thing as well. So today we just wanted to share with you some different things that we have found helpful over the years. And hopefully there's some things there that can either help you as missionaries to be able to handle those challenges well, or if you are a family member or a church that's listening to this, to be able to understand the different challenges that your missionary may be facing.
Now, we recognize that every family is different and every furlough looks a little different depending on how many churches you have to visit. Do you have to travel from one side of the country to the other? What are the ages of your kids? So while we're throwing out some general things that we've learned, we also recognize that every single furlough and within every family, it's going to look a little different.
Absolutely. And your needs will change as your family does as well. So something that works really well today in 5 or 10 years from now may not work. So you have to adapt and change to that as well. So just kind of as a starting point, you may hear the word furlough. I think that the term actually was taken from the military when people would come back on furlough and they'd be off the field of duty and be back for rest and refreshment. But that's probably where that term came from. But oftentimes the term is now used home-based ministry or
Home assignment, I think.
which it's difficult to understand there because, as for us, our home is overseas. And so our kids too, their home is overseas. So it doesn't really make sense there. But so whatever you term it, furlough or home assignment, this is what it is. And in our handbook of our mission agency, it says the purpose of furlough is reporting, ministering to supporting churches, refreshment, preparing for subsequent term of service, and enlisting new workers. The goals and purposes of furlough are so important for us to keep in focus. You have so many things that are drawing you in multiple different directions that it is so important to keep those key things of reporting to churches, ministering to supporting churches and individual supporters, refreshment, preparing for future service, and enlisting new missionaries. Those are so important to keep in focus as to why we're doing why we're there. And then also just the opportunity to connect with churches and supporters. Now, some things have changed in the last 17 years since we've started this process in missions. So just a few different ways that things have changed. One is a big one. You used to leave the ministries on the field when you were on furlough. Now that we have WhatsApp and email is on your phone, like when we went to the field, I had a cell phone, but it was not a smartphone because
Absolutely.
smartphones weren't out yet. You didn't have online conference calls. So now all of these things follow you everywhere. And so I think that's been a big change there, that if before, whether you were in church planning or whatever you were in, people really wouldn't be calling you all the time from the field. And now it's so easy. You're still on the group chat. So you're still getting dings and all kinds of things. So that has been a big change. And this digital change has made many responsibilities and meetings available anywhere, anytime. And so it has made the importance of setting boundaries a bit more important because normal boundaries no longer apply. You can't just because you're gone doesn't mean you're not available.
Now, that does have a positive side. It means that we can kind of still be a part of the ministries, and if people have questions, if they need us to step in to speak into something. So there's definitely a positive side, but I think what we haven't as missionaries taken into account for is if you come home to a slam-packed, busy furlough schedule doing ministry stateside, you're also going to end up doing ministry from overseas too. So it's kind of a catch-22.
Yeah. And I think the struggle there is that for me personally is I've had to learn how to set better boundaries because I didn't have to before. It was just a natural boundary, like you were gone. So you couldn't be reached. And so that has changed and has forced me to do that, do more of that. And also depending on your role or ministry, some of your role actually goes with you wherever you're at. It's not a full stop. So for us as a regional director, I'm still regional director when I'm on furlough. So that you're actually doing two kind of jobs at the same time. So that is a bit of a different thing there. Heather, for what about for you?
One of the things that I've noticed in the last 17 years is just the change of pace. I feel like the pace of life has increased everywhere globally. And
Mm,
that's probably because of the social media and our online availability. We can just do so much more, but kind of then are expected, to hit the ground running wherever we're at, whatever country we're in, whatever time zone we're in. The world just moves at such a quick pace. And when we first started taking furloughs, you could actually kind of take a deep breath at times because maybe people actually had to physically dial a phone, to get to talk to you or to set up a meeting or something. And now, like you kind of referenced, because of WhatsApp groups and everything, things just keep moving so fast. And that's been a difficult shift for me to make, is to feel like I can keep up with the pace.
yeah. Even your phones didn't used to like when we'd go on furlough. We're in South Africa. You leave your South African number there, and you're not getting calls in the U.S. from that number. Now we have like multiple SIMs and everything like that. You're available anywhere, anytime. People can get you, and so I think that is also a component to that as well.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the just general challenges there as you think through the different challenges that missionaries face on furlough?
Yeah, some common things we hear from people after they've come on back on furlough, or some of the things we've felt ourselves. You kind of alluded to it being pulled in so many different directions on furlough with the different goals that you have and the people you need to see. That can be a big one. You want to reconnect with supporting churches. You want to reconnect with individual supporters. Definitely want to see your family. You may need to raise additional support. You may still have some online responsibilities and responsibilities back from the field. You might be at a time where you're having to have some health concerns taken care of, or trying to take a break because of being in early stages of burnout. There's just a lot of different directions that you're pulled on in furlough. Another thing is, focusing on family health. It can be really challenging to keep your family healthy during furlough just because of the fast pace. You're not in your own home, you're on the road all the time. Um, those can definitely be areas that really kind of start to create stress. But Kyle, out of all that list, what would you say is the biggest challenge for you when we're on furlough?
Definitely being pulled in so many different directions. Like you have a desire to be fully engaged. You want to have more time with family. You want to have more time with supporters. You want to spend more time with churches. You want to be challenging people. So you're just pulled in so many different directions. And I think that can be a difficult pressure to be able to
Yeah.
manage that.
Yeah. I think I put a lot of pressure on myself in that area.
Hmm.
Like, family time expectations. I feel guilty if I have to say no to, meeting for dinner with someone in our church because we, have to be on the road, or I feel like I'm always saying, no, I can't do this because we're traveling. But I think a lot of it is pressure I put on myself to meet with all these individuals, which is such a blessing. And you really want to, you just have such limited time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, some of the positive things, as you alluded to there, we love spending time with the churches that support us, the individuals and families that support us. We love hanging out with our families, being able to see them and reconnect with them, and this can be a very just enriching time. It's also a great time to build some lasting memories with just your immediate family, to be able to have some fun things to be able to do, and be able to connect up with family members. Meeting new people is a great opportunity to be challenging people to consider missions. And over and over again, we hear that people are on the field because somebody challenged them to consider missions, or they heard someone speaking on missions. And so that's just such a great reminder for us as missionaries. When we're in churches, you are a missionary statesman. That's our role, to be able to challenge the hearts of other people to consider what God is doing in their life, to lead them potentially into overseas missions, or how to get involved in that. And so don't negate or lessen that role that you have there. Part of your role is not only to tell what God's doing in your ministry, but also to challenge other people to go. And we shouldn't waste that opportunity. Um, Other positives are just taking a little bit of time for conferences or training or further education. What do we need to do to be most effective for the next term of ministry? Heather, what about you? What is your favorite positive side of furlough? One of the things you enjoy the most?
Yeah, so I love reconnecting with family. I mean, that's kind of a given. I mean, we miss them and miss holidays with them and stuff, but one of the things that always surprises me, and it shouldn't, but always really encourages my heart is when we are in the churches and you hear in person with people who's praying for you.
Mm,
When someone specifically asks me about a prayer request that they want to follow up and say, "How did that turn out?" Or, "Hey, we've been praying for this." That encourages my heart in ways I never thought it would. That people an ocean away really are praying, and we get to meet these people and hear it from them. Um, Being in the churches and being able to encourage people about missions and lean into the needs that are around the world and share that is always really fun for me. Now the catch side is it's also very exhausting. Like there are Sunday mornings I get up and I'm like, I do not have the energy to interact with a bunch of people that I don't really remember, and I probably don't remember your name, and I'm embarrassed about that, and all those issues that go into that. There's definitely days where I'm like, I can't do this, but it's really energizing, the people that are holding the ropes and to be back in contact. And now that we've, been on the field for so long, some of these churches we know so well the people in them. It is an absolute joy, to bump into people out in the store sometimes, or when we were at Cedarville University and people are like, "Oh, you're missionaries." Um, it's just really life giving being back in your supporting churches.
mm.
So even though it's exhausting, I do actually enjoy that part.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I always really love, and you do too, but just hanging out with our individual supporters as well, and just doing something fun with them and hanging out. I go dirt biking with one of our supporters, and we went and just hung out on a little boat ride with someone else, and just to hang out and just to be friends with them. And that's, I think we just enjoy that it's um, just being able to reconnect with those individual supporters that are our friends. And we just like hearing how God's working in their life and seeing how God's growing them as well.
Yeah, because sometimes you can feel a little bit lonely on furlough. You've left the people over in the country you're working in that are your friends that you interact with day in day out, that you hang out with and have pizza with, and it's wonderful to come back to the States and do some fun things with friends and connect that way and be able to deepen those relationships.
Yeah. So I think that is one of the difficulties of missions, especially moving multiple times, is you do leave a lot of friends.
Mm.
And so trying to really be intentional whenever you can, to be able to build into those relationships and those friendships there. And it takes forethought and planning, but it is really helpful for just our longevity and encouragement that way. So, Heather, you'd mentioned managing expectations, or the different expectations we put on ourselves, and I think this is a really a key stressor in furlough that I think gets missed a lot of times because it's not like the main thing that's visible. It's actually an invisible pressure that we're putting on ourselves. And so, one of the things that we found helpful to just to help with that is just to be preemptively working on that. And you do that by setting your calendar before you're sending out your furlough announcements. So if you have a family vacation or a family time planned, just putting family travels in your calendar when you send it out to churches. So that if you just leave an empty gap on the calendar, churches will want to have you come, and so then you're having to
Choose.
choose. Yeah, you're pressured. Then you're having to choose between family or churches. But if you just plan in advance and put the important family things that you want on your calendar, it helps you to think through that in advance. Like, okay, what is going to be a good balance for us? And then when you get bombarded with different requests, you've already made the decision of what's going to be helpful and healthy.
Yeah, I think part of that is starting early in the planning of furlough and just sitting down and talking through what are the goals for this furlough? Like, is it we've really got to raise a lot of support? Like, that is really a main goal. Or is it doing an educational piece or a further study? Or is it, getting kids ready to launch for college? Like, sometimes we really have to nail down the goal of this furlough. And it's different. Like, we've had very different furloughs. One furlough I was having a baby, and that really changed. That was a goal in that furlough, survive having a baby. But that's helped us kind of then set the tone for the whole rest of our schedule when we could really articulate a couple of the main goals for the furlough.
Yeah, it helps you because you're going to have to say no to lots of different things. But if you have a reason or a purpose that's like, okay, no, that doesn't help us meet our goals. And so it helps to be able to say no to two things and not feel guilty and this weight of expectations that you're putting on yourself and pushing too hard too. So just that to balance yourself and say, what is a healthy balance and margin that we need to have there? And so building that in as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So another part to this is very similarly is vacations and recharging on furlough. And a lot of times you think about furlough that and people are like, "Oh, you're just on vacation for like
Oh
6
my
months."
goodness. People have said that to me. I do not know how many times, but sometimes in a negative tone, like, oh, must be nice to take a 6-month vacation. So it comes at you from both directions.
Yeah, that's usually that direction.
I know.
But yeah, it's actually double work. And how do you actually fit that in so that you're able to have some of those vacations if you need it to recharge on furlough? We mentioned this just a second ago, but just planning the family time on the calendar, putting it on the calendar, or it's not going to happen. Other things are just going to suffocate that out. Another one, planning some time for just you and your spouse or your immediate family in the middle of your furlough to recharge. So furloughs throw everything off, throws all your rhythms off. It disrupts your normal family time, and so you need to pause and reset to stay close. Um, you want to mention just kind of how we did our Christmas with on furlough we were
Oh,
back?
yeah. So I figured out a while ago that for me personally, having a little Christmas celebration with just our immediate family was a really big deal to me. And our family was growing. We were adding a son-in-law, and we were home what 2 furloughs ago over Christmas. And I was trying to figure out how I'd recognize that this was a need for me. I was going to be disappointed if I couldn't, make this happen. And so we were actually traveling from Iowa back to Jackson, Michigan, and we decided to stop overnight and get an Airbnb. All the kids and the future son-in-law was with us,
Because we don't
and
have a home when we're back in
right.
the
We don't have
States.
a
We
home to
stay with
make this
people.
happen.
Yeah.
And so we were trying to figure out how could we make this happen? Well, we were in between, it was right
Yeah.
like the day before or after
Yeah, right
Christmas
around
or
Christmas.
right after Christmas. And I had brought Christmas lights to make a Christmas tree on the wall. And we brought a few decorations and we packed all the presents. And we normally do kind of like a fun food. So we figured out where we could grab some fun takeout. And we recreated our family Christmas in this random Airbnb in a not so nice section outside of Chicago. But what's funny is our kids still comment about that. we still made Christmas happen. We made Christmas happen like we like to do Christmas. And I realized it was really important for them too. It took a little money and it took some extra planning, but I had already recognized that that was a need that I had. And it seemed to really resonate with the kids too.
Yeah, no, it totally did. Another thing that we found helpful is just planning a vacation when you get back to the field. You have to. We always say we kind of have to have a furlough from our furlough. So we're usually so busy during the furlough that we typically do our main vacations on the field, so we can maximize our time back in the States with family, friends, and supporters. And in the States, you're also sometimes kind of feel like you're under a microscope when you take a vacation. So sometimes it is easier, either on your way back to the country, back to your country where you serve too. We've done that before, where you're already flying, so just add a few days and a
And a
long
layover.
layover. Yeah, add a layover somewhere, and one of the ways you can do that is just say in your prayer updates or whatever, "Hey, we're arriving back on this date." So you don't have to list when you're departing. You can just say when you're getting back, and this saves you the money of because you're already flying there to a city, adding a few extra days on there. Um, One of the hangups we used to have with that was, oh, well, what do we do with all the luggage? Then we discovered airport lockers. Most airports have them, and you can rent them for at least a week. You can put all the bags you don't need in there, and you can jump on a train, a bus, a metro, a rental car, a tuk tuk, whatever, and
Elephant, whatever we
elephants,
need to
yeah,
do.
wherever you're at, bicycle, have a vacation. Just have your carry-ons and maybe one bag that you need, and that has that was super super helpful for us to be able to have some fun vacations as a family, explore some things. You get an Airbnb, cook for yourself, and the cost of your thing is really um,
The
just the
Airbnb,
activities. The
yeah.
Airbnb is in the activities because you're cooking for yourself and maybe getting groceries for or getting a lunch out or something like that. So it's a very affordable way to do that. Just don't post the pictures. It's not worth it. um, Another one is letting our kids help plan the schedule, some fun events that they can look forward to, whether it be as they get older, youth group activities, different events, um, letting them be a part of that furlough planning process. They don't feel like they're just dragged along. So, Heather, what about though? Any other thoughts for kids and furlough? What are some ways to help make that a better process for them?
I get asked about this a lot because we've done furloughs with newborns all the way to, college students. And I will say it changes. It looks different when they're little all the way up to, when they were older. One of the things when they were little, the complication was, working around nap times and what if they have an early bedtime schedule? It's just different and a bit harder, I would say, when kids were little. But one of the things, to go super serious right away, one of the things that I put too much pressure on myself when the kids were very little was I thought they needed to be at every single church with us. And part of it was pressure that churches put on me. If I didn't bring one of the kids, someone would inevitably say, "Oh, why aren't the kids here? We love seeing the kids. You should have brought the kids." But what I should have been doing is evaluating, is this going to be a good experience? Are they, maybe have a cold or haven't been sleeping well? Like, should they stay with their grandparents? I should have evaluated that better when my kids were little. As we moved along in our furloughs, I think I got definitely okay with, you know, saying in my own heart, no, the children don't need to go to this church. It's okay. They can stay and go to church with, my parents or whoever, they were staying with. And that seemed to really help because it kind of moved into a place where I could evaluate each Sunday trip. Now, this wasn't when we were on, 2 weeks on the road. I'm talking about if we just had a day trip or an overnight trip. Um, but I really felt like a pressure to bring them everywhere, and it didn't go so well sometimes. Uh, As they got older, I evaluated that better and tried to take into account, had they been sleeping well? Are we passing a cold around? Should I stay home with the kids and Kyle just go? And not feel that pressure to be every single place. But some of the fun things we did with when the kids were little, one furlough when we had to travel a lot, we got a zoo pass that kind of worked all over the nation at a lot of zoos, and we would go to a place and visit a zoo while we were there.
And if you buy it at the smaller zoo, it still gets you into the big zoo, but it's a lot cheaper. So, little pro tip on that one.
True, absolutely. I also had one child that really needed to know the schedule. And so we made this big, huge calendar. I think it was out of felt or
Yeah, it
something, and she
was.
could stick different things on it. And we would talk through the schedule for literally the whole month. And we're going to be gone this many sleeps, and this is where we're going. And that was so helpful. And then she could just refer to the calendar instead of asking me 800 million questions. But that's also something, to take into account with kids is, do you have a child that struggles with a fast paced, constant change in the schedule? Like, you might not be able to stop traveling for that child, but you might be able to build in some things like their own calendar, or every Monday we sit down and we're going to talk about this hectic week, maybe starting the morning going over the schedule, because it's very different on furlough. Like, your rhythms are not the same, and some kids really struggled with that.
Something else that you had learned when Natalie was born in South Africa with like the you know share that was
Yeah.
that was really helpful. That was a game changer for us traveling for sleep.
I know. So I realized in South Africa that a lot of the women kind of sleep trained their child for a pram or a stroller. And then wherever they went and they took their stroller, when it was nap time, they would just throw a blanket over the top of the stroller and the kid would go to sleep. And I'm like, oh my goodness, that's amazing. So the first thing we did was buy a stroller that was really compact and easy to travel with, but comfy. I guess it was comfy. And we trained Natalie to take her naps and be able to sleep in the stroller. And so we could be in the middle of a church service, nap time. I just stick the blanket over her, she goes to sleep. It didn't work perfectly, but it was a lot easier than when we traveled with Abby and Emily during pre-field when they were smaller, and we were always trying to find a place to have a nap and get a good sleep. So that was kind of fun to learn to do it that way. We did a lot of checklists. Kyle did a lot of checklists.
After forgetting a few things because you're trying to get your kids in the car and all this, after that, I made checklists for every single bag and put it on the bag so that all I had to do was just check those off as I'm putting it in the car. And it took a lot of pressure off, helped me to not be as divided mentally, and so I could be more focused and fully present with as I was going through everything. So that was helpful for me to go through that.
Yeah. I would love to ask churches to be really gracious with us as families and our kids, especially young kids. Every Sunday is not going to be great. They are not going to be on their best behavior. They might have just been on the road for, a month, and we get to a Sunday that they don't want to talk to anybody. They don't want to go into Sunday school. Like, that just might be a once off. Like, please don't judge our entire family over what you see our toddler doing that morning. But I have a story to share about Abby. We were home on a furlough, and we were up at a church that we know very well. And they were, had a great Sunday school, and she had met some people the night before. We'd had a pizza party with some from the missions committee, and there was another family there who's currently on the mission field, but they were preparing to go into missions. And so they were kind of watching everything that was going on. And Abby really hit it off with their daughter, and they were playing at the pizza party and then saw each other at church the next morning. And, but she'd gone off to Sunday school class, and they had this big, amazing Sunday school program. And we were kind of at the part of furlough where you're homesick for where you were, but she was starting to learn, some of the perks to being in America too. So it was an awkward emotional stage in our furlough. But she got out of that Sunday school class and came and sat down at the service and just burst out in tears, because the big, huge program with all the kids and the stuff going on, we didn't have where we were serving at that time. And she kind of felt like she was really missing out. And she's like, why can't I have something like this. Well, this other missionary wife that was preparing to go to the field kind of watched that interaction and asked if everything was okay. And I said, yeah, yeah, it's fine. And I was just comforting Abby. And then fast forward, the church service is done. We're out by the table. The kids are out by the display table. And Abby's like, oh, I want to say goodbye to my friend that I just met. And I said, oh, well, there's her dad. Go ask, if you can go say goodbye. And so she goes running up to her dad at the door. He's ready to leave the church and finds out that this girl had already left church with her mother. And Abby turns around and looks at me and just bursts out in tears. And the dad felt bad. And he's kind of looking at me like, is there anything I can do? And I'm like, no, no, it's just kind of one of those days. And, comforting Abby, I'm sorry you didn't get to say goodbye and stuff. Well, that night we were at a church service just across town at a different church. And that family that was preparing for missions showed up, and they were like, oh, we thought I'd bring, our daughter over. We realized that Abby, had wanted to say goodbye. And so she got to say goodbye, and that was a really special gift. And then the mom was like, is this what we're going to do to our kids? Kind of that fear of, because she watched Abby cry during the morning service, cry after the service. But, it was kind of the realization that there's going to be some messy on furlough, and people are watching that. So just be gracious with us, but also for us missionaries to allow our kids to grieve a bit on furlough. Like, if it's a really long furlough, they've left what was familiar. They've left their room full of toys. They've left their friends, maybe their school, and they've come to what might be for them a kind of new country if they haven't spent a lot of time in America. There might be some, culture shock going on, or just not understanding, how to do things in America, and definitely not having friends. It can be for us adults, we're coming back to familiar. But for MKs, furlough can just be, it can be awkward. It's dispersed with amazing fun things, fun times with families, and maybe a trip to an amusement park or something really great. But there's can be this underlying just discontent, or maybe grieving their true home, where they really have their life, their day in, day out.
Yeah. Something else that we kind of experimented with. Our first furlough was, I think, 10 months.
It was.
And we
That's when
did,
Natalie was born.
Natalie was born. And we have about 26 supporting churches. And so we visited all of them. It about killed me. It was just, the pace of it was just too much for us. And so after that, we reevaluated. And for us, it worked to do this. And it doesn't work for everyone. But for us, after that, we decided that instead of doing the longer furlough every 4 years, we were going to do a 3.5 month furlough every 2 years. And for us, that has worked. We visited half of our churches each time, and just kind of been upfront with them on that. And we don't get around to visit everyone every time, but it has allowed our kids to reconnect with family a bit more frequently. And so that has been really, really nice over the years, to be able to have that. And also, I feel like for me, it helps me to be able to, probably for both of us, to 3.5 months is a bit more manageable time frame to maintain that pace and to be away from home. And it just takes so much more time preparing and getting ready for things before you go, when you get back, for a 10-month or 1 year furlough than it does for a 3-month furlough. So that's just been something that's been helpful for us. Again, doesn't work for everyone, but for us, that we have found that helpful. Another thing, just for planning furloughs, is just that reminder that, as kids get older, things are going to change of what you need to include in there. As when they're younger, fitting in a zoo trip is a great thing. When they're older, making some more time for them to have some consistent activity, whether it be maybe a local youth group that's nearby, they can be involved with more frequently there, and just getting some interaction with their passport country culture and the kids there, having some friends that they can be able to build there, so that their idea is not just like, everything in America is just go, go, go. And you don't want them to come away from hating that. And so you want them to have some relationships there. And so as they get into their teen years, to be able to incorporate time for that, when they get close to college, making sure you include some time for college visits. And sometimes you have to plan 2 or 3 years out where they have to go do some college visits then, or also just even doing job shadowing. Our kids in middle school we were
Mhm.
thinking through job shadowing because they don't always have time to do that on the field
Or opportunity.
or opportunity. Sorry, that's what I meant. Yeah, thanks. So that's an important one. What about now? This I've heard this phrase. I'm an MK, so I've heard the phrase. The furlough 40, or sometimes the furlough 15, and the weight and unhealthiness as you come back to the states and just being out of sync with your normal routine.
Or for really good reasons. People want to take you out to dinner. Churches have the pizza party, which you could end up having 8 pizza parties in a row,
Yeah.
but all really loving, fun things to do and new
Hmm.
experiences or foods you haven't been able to eat in forever on your field. So you really want to have that Tex-Mex meal. So not that it's a bad thing. There are some really fun food things that we look forward to in the States.
Yes.
But
So, just some different things that we've found helpful is in this process. Again, everyone's gonna be different on this, but when we were first raising support,
let me just say the reason that we're mentioning this is because this is a common topic of discussion among missionaries is how do you go on furlough and not gain a ton of weight? And then when you come back, and especially if you're in a country that's very bold with their comments, you get told, "Oh, you got fat." So this is actually a widely discussed topic among missionaries and furlough.
absolutely. So, when you were first starting off on even just pre-field, we started doing the whole fast food option, but very quickly realized we felt horrible. So we started planning ahead. So Heather, you made some plans for this. You want to talk about how you've helped work on that?
Yeah, we've definitely figured out that we need to avoid fast food to feel okay. But one of the things we did was we had a cooler that plugged into the car, and I could cook chicken strips or different things, cut up all the veggies, have yogurt cups, and we could keep it cold on our trips. And you could take it right into the hotel and plug it in the hotel. Just being able to eat prepared food. But then also, especially more recently, the options within the grocery stores to eat straight out of the grocery store, different healthy lunch meats that you can get now, and like the yogurt cups and the cheese squares and stuff that requires no preparation, nuts and fruits and even some vegetables that are already cut. You can get like those little trays with cherry tomatoes and baby carrots and celery sticks and things, being able to eat straight out of a grocery store. And so it's kind of funny because we're like, all right, we're on the road. And it's like, where are we having lunch? Oh, there's a Walmart. And what we mean is we're going to go eat some, find some of the good foods, even the prepared salads and stuff like that, that are very comparable, if not cheaper, than a restaurant, but we can feel a bit better and eat straight, out of a grocery store. And it actually saves a lot of time too on the road.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I think probably a big one on that is we do try to skip the carbs a lot of those meals, and is a simple but very helpful way to avoid that. So if you get the yogurts, just avoid the ones with sugar in them. Another helpful one that I found helpful is fasting or intermittent fasting. If we know we're going to be having a big meal at lunch or at dinner, just skip breakfast or skip breakfast and lunch, and looking at calories from a daily view, not a meal by meal view. And so then when you're going to a restaurant you want to enjoy, you enjoy, and you just plan ahead and save your calories up for it. So a book that was helpful for me on that is the Eat Stop Eat, and I'll put a link in the show notes for a summary of that if you'd like to check that out.
And I travel with a lot of boiled eggs.
Yep. Yep.
So have those for breakfast on the road and keep moving.
Yep. I think for the fasting thing has also been helpful for travels, and that if for some reason something happens, I don't have to feel as controlled by food anymore. I don't think I'm going to die if I miss a meal. I can catch some food later. So it doesn't work for everyone, but it's been helpful for me on that. So exercise. You don't have your gym with you when you're on furlough, and you may not have one on the field either. So some things that have been helpful is finding things that you can do anywhere with little or no equipment. So for cardio, some things that are helpful, you can do the HIIT training, and there's tons of videos online that you can use to follow along with that. If you like to jog, you can do that. Jump rope, animal flow is another one I found helpful.
I really like the animal flow because after you've been sitting in a car for so long, it's these movements that you kind of do on the floor that really help your joints wake up and get rid of the stiffness. And there's videos on YouTube for that too.
Yeah, what's nice about that one is it's kind of like your joint mobility, your muscular workout, as well as some cardio built into all three of those are all built into one. So it's really really helpful to get a lot of that done. For strength, I really like the bodyweight exercises that I can do anywhere. There's a book called Convict Conditioning, and that has been kind of the foundational part for me to be able to build a lot of off of over the years. I travel with this is the Olympic rings. You can throw them over a jungle gym. You can put them on a tree. You can hook them to a door frame. So those are nice. You can travel with those exercise bands. You can use anywhere. And this was nice as you can just anywhere you go, you can get some exercise that way. And so just to be able to find some consistency 3 to 4 times a week, even if it's just 10 to 30 minutes, being consistent is really really helpful. And it may not be like your best workout ever, but if you're doing something consistently, it really helps you to build and to maintain what you've already worked for. So Heather, what about for you? What are some things that you've found helpful in that?
Yeah, I definitely lean into the more body weight exercises, the animal flow. If I have a jump rope, I really like to jump rope. But I think consistency is the key. If you're someplace and you know you can't do any of those, but I could get in a 20-minute walk, go for the 20-minute walk, especially if that includes sunshine and outdoors fresh
Mm,
air, because we kind of sit a lot in furlough if we're traveling a lot or in meetings or at churches. So chasing those opportunities to just go for a walk or pound out some squats just with body weight or push-ups and sit-ups, some of those basics that you can do anywhere, just keep your body moving. I think movement is the big deal.
yeah, absolutely. And if you stop, you definitely feel it. And so it's just so important to keep that up and maintain that and do what you can where you're at. So this last furlough, we had a really big support deficit that we needed to make up, and that is one of the things that often comes up around the furlough time is just needing to be able to raise some more support to be able to continue doing what God has you doing. And so it took a lot of time though just to evaluate that process and evaluate what God was teaching me through that process. So I just made some notes in that. This is just literally from my journal during our last furlough. And I just wanted to share some of that with you because, as we go into support raising, we have to trust God, but we also have to do our part. There's a balance between faith and responsibility. And so these are just some of the lessons and reminders while facing a support deficit. Again, we've had a few of these over the years. So here they were. Why does God allow the challenge? This is a question. Why does God allow the challenge of support raising and support needs? If he wanted to do all the support raising, he could do it in an instant. So here's some of the reasons that God encouraged me with. First is that challenges reveal our need for God's help. If we didn't have the challenge, we could become more dependent on ourselves. So we could be self reliant. So challenges make us dependent on God, not self reliant, and it reminds us that we are dependent. Challenges also create an opportunity for God to show up and show off. He gets the glory, not our perfect plan. So when we're weak, he's strong. Another is that challenges force us to learn and grow to overcome the challenge. And as we learn and grow, we can share that with other people as well. Challenges force us to take action, do our part. We can't be lazy and do nothing, but we must also trust God while doing the means that he ordains to bring about his plans. We have to take the steps of faith. Another is that challenges engage more of the body of Christ, either through prayer, giving, or serving when there's a need. And this enables more people to be storing up eternal rewards. Challenges humble us by reminding us that we don't know everything and that we're not all powerful. We are not God. Challenges remind us to be content with God's plan and not fight against God's plan. Challenges create an opportunity for us to grow our faith by testing it. Untested faith is just potential faith. We grow stronger by pushing the limits, not by maintaining the status quo. Just like you get stronger by actually exercising physically and pushing those limits, that's how we spiritually grow stronger too. God gives us spiritual exercises to grow our faith. Challenges remind us that peace and comfort are not based on our circumstances, but on God. We find rest and peace in God, not in circumstances that are going our way. We need regular reminders so that we don't begin to love comfort more than Christ. And these reminders come in the form of our circumstances being shaken. And when our circumstances are shaken, it reminds us to trust in the one who is unshakable. And it reveals that for us. And then just that reminder to thank God for the challenges. They're being used by God to grow us and strengthen us and to glorify God. And just to not waste those trials or challenges. He's using it as a chance to show others that God is trustworthy and true. He's dependable. As we take that step of faith to say, you know what? We believe that God is leading us in this direction, and we believe that He can provide. It demonstrates faith and that He is reliable. Challenges remind us that it's God's work, and it's not our work, it's His work. He lets us be a part of it, and apart from Him, we can do nothing. In Psalm 138:8, it says, "The Lord will fulfill His purpose for me." And so we don't have to fear. Fearing something, we've talked about this in other podcasts, but to fear something is to fear that God is not in control of that something, which is doubting His sovereignty. Or to fear something is to fear that God's will isn't best for our life, which is doubting His goodness. We have to trust that God will fulfill His purpose for me and that it's best. So those are some things that God has challenged, encouraged me with in thinking about the need for doing support raising. Why does God have us to do those things? And those were helpful as I was thinking through that. As we think through some practical things that are helpful on furlough, some things that we've used over the years. We mentioned a little bit before, but one is checklists, not just for packing lists, but thinking through checklists on all different areas. If you can do it once, it saves you the brain space of having to think through it every time. So we do them for packing lists. I have one for preparing for furlough. I have a document for scheduling churches and just kind of the order that we need to do that in, mapping out a potential schedule. If it's something you're having to do once, if you can document it in a checklist form, you use it the first time, and then the next time, all you have to do is go back and uncheck those boxes, and then your checklist for next time is all set up again, so you don't have to rethink through, oh, what do I need to do before furlough? If you do it once, it saves you the time of having to do it again. Another one, planning and scheduling in advance. We mentioned earlier, but putting family events on the calendar first, that's super, super helpful. And then churches, starting about 6 months out if possible. For new churches, we've found we have to actually start contacting about a year out.
Or sometimes earlier to get into a new church.
Yeah, it does take a long time. Then training events you want to do, vacations. And then once you have all your family events and churches booked, then you can reach out to the individuals to start filling in your weeks and planning that way. Another one that's helpful for planning ahead is having your PowerPoint done before you leave for furlough. Order your prayer cards in advance and your support raising material, so it's sitting there waiting for you when you get there. And then when you get there, you can be focused on people, which is why you're there. Not trying to plan and scramble around. And so getting everything on the schedule, including some times that we can decompress. I think we found that for being back 3 months, we usually try to plan a few days in the middle there with just us and our family with no ministry to play and relax and just do something that recharges us. And when you hit the ground, the major things in our schedule, they've already been set. So we're not scrambling what to do for furlough, and we can just, you make the plan, work the plan. And that's been really, really helpful over the years. Other things, travel tips, adding buffer.
Can you say that again? Yeah?
This is something that I have to work at. I am very efficient normally, and so I will plan it down to the wire. So
30 seconds wire, right? So
yes, highly efficient. So adding 50% to your estimate. And so that has been very, very helpful for me just to plan ahead. Hey, if I think it's going to take 10 minutes, plan for 15. If I think it's going to take an hour, plan for an hour and a half and just buffer that into your schedule so you can
this has
not be as
changed
rushed.
your marriage on furloughs. I'm
Yes.
just I'm just throwing that out there. This
Yep.
has really been a positive change in our furloughs.
It can be very, very helpful. So plan for buffer and margin, add 50% to your estimate of what you think you need, just add an extra 50%. And this will help your relationships, like your marriage. It'll also help your health. You won't be as stressed and rushed around all the time. It'll also help you with your kids to them not feel as just dragged around, and you won't be as short with them. So that's really helpful. Another helpful one is just redeeming the time using podcasts, audiobooks. If I'm traveling alone, I'll make phone calls. And so just redeeming the time while you're traveling to use that there.
But that also, you have to be careful with that one because that one can also build into that constant work and on the go. We didn't used to be able to do conference calls while we drove
This is true.
or listen to podcasts or, do work. So there really is a balance there with do I need to just take this travel time and listen to worship music or whatever it is that recharges you without feeling like, because sometimes I think you feel like, Kyle, you don't want to have wasted time. And so
Mhm.
what can I fill it with? But then we can fill it with too much and we end up never taking a breath, right?
Yep. So I think most of my travels now, when I'm flying at least, I don't do the email work that I used to do.
Mm-hmm.
I'll read a book that is for my personal growth and development. It's something that I enjoy that way, but it's energizing that way. And so that's a good point there that you have to be able to balance that as well. Some other hacks, things that have been helpful using calendar reminders. There are so many things to keep track of on furlough, but if I know that we have a shared calendar, and when I make an event, we put a reminder in there so it'll ding at us, and that has helped because then it's not on my brain anymore. It's off my brain. It's on my calendar. It's fine. For travels, we'll put all the details for the event, whether it's hotel details, car rentals, church phone numbers, whatever you need, all of it, the waypoint, everything in that calendar event. So when you're making it, then that's the one place you have to go. You're not looking around trying to find where's the phone number or where's this. Just get in the habit of go to that calendar event and it's all there. And so that reduces a lot of unnecessary stress if just having that habit and then having those alerts. Um, some things don't work to go on a shared calendar. So just to be able to have something that I'm being reminded of, I have an app called Alarmed that has a wonderful feature called Relentless. And so I can have it remind me every hour, half hour, 15 minutes, 5 minutes, 1 minute. It'll make sure that I'm reminded of what I need to do. And so when we're in furlough and you have so many different things to keep track of, that's been really helpful. If someone asks me to do something, I'm like, you know what, I really want to remember to do that. I'm putting it in my app right now. And so then I'll remember it. So there's another one that was just called Time Rich, how to maximize your time in your life. I'll add that into the links here. That was just a blog post I did a while back. Heather, what are some things for you that have been helpful hacks or tips?
Yeah, I definitely use the app called Recipe Keeper, and I can put all sorts of recipes in there, whether it's snapping a picture of them, whether it's pulling it off a website, to be able to take my recipes that I need to cook for my family anywhere in the world with us. Because, I mean, who wants to lug around a cookbook? Or I was saving pictures in my photos and they were getting buried and I couldn't find anything. So this app, the Recipe Keeper, has really been helpful. And another thing that's really been helpful on furlough, and this goes back to traveling with kids, um, people are so gracious to our kids on furlough. They give wonderful gifts. Sometimes the church will give the kids a gift certificate and say, Go pick out whatever you want. That strikes fear in the heart of a missionary parent because we're thinking suitcase space. We're thinking that item that they're really, really, really going to want to take back with them is too heavy or,
Like a
you know,
doll kitchen that takes up a whole suitcase.
right. But, I feel like we were constantly telling our kids, no, you can't have that. Or that was really sweet of them to give that to you, but we can't take that back home. Or if we were home over Christmas and they were gifted things that they really loved, and we wanted to somehow make a way for them to bring things back. And so we kind of got to a point where we would just pay for an extra bag if we needed to and be okay with that. If we had it in the funds, we would buy an extra suitcase. We had the extra suitcase, but pay for it to go on the plane with us. And so, just, a little thing to throw out there: churches, families and friends, small groups. If you wanted to gift your missionary something unique, you could offer to cover the cost of getting an extra bag back to their country, because it really is hard with kids to constantly be telling them, no, they can't have that. And for some of the countries that we live in, you can't get very much stuff. When we were in Tanzania, we had to decide, do we bring back that really cool toy or the socks and underwear we're going to need for the next term? Those were big decisions. But we just kind of, for our family, decided if we get to the end of furlough and we have to pay for an extra bag, we will do that. And that really took off a lot of, not stress, but sadness, I think, for me, to constantly tell my kids, we can't take that back, or I'm sorry, I'm so glad they gave that to you, but that can't go. I mean, there's going to be things that can't go, but I felt like I was constantly saying
Like the
that.
6-foot tall stuffed animal that we had once.
Where in the world did that even come from? I do remember that.
We told her she couldn't keep it before she got it.
That's
she
right.
wanted it like an Awana
Oh,
type
she
thing.
wanted, that's right, a massive 4-foot, 6-foot teddy bear.
It was solid.
Anyways, she definitely enjoyed it over the furlough.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are, I think, sometimes things that sneak up on us and that we don't realize are kind of sad.
And that does actually reduce stress for the one that's doing the packing, because for some reason, when I'm packing, the great activity that my family decides to go do every time is shopping. I'm like, no, literally, I'm packing everything that we own in suitcases, and you're out buying more stuff. I can't do this.
I'm over here laughing so hard I can hardly breathe, because he is so true. Packing stresses me out. So I'm like, I will get out of your hair, but then I go shopping. Oh, anyways.
So this has been great, because I was like, all right, that's fine. We'll pack, and we'll fit it all into as we can. If we need an extra bag, we'll get an extra bag, and we'll make a plan. So,
because that one bag of chocolate chips that I come back with is actually very important and soothes my soul.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So those are some helpful ones there. A couple other quick things. Digital helps. Having your autoresponder set, so when you're traveling, it takes the pressure off to be able to respond and constantly checking email. So I don't feel as pressured to do that. I'll say something like, I'm traveling for vacation or for meetings or whatever until this date. I'll respond to your message as soon as able. Thanks for your understanding. Sign it, and then says for those that are inside your organization, you can add, if it's urgent, you can call me and you can WhatsApp me at blank number. And this helps me to not feel the pressure to check the email. And I don't get tons of WhatsApps until I get back. And so it's been a real helpful for me to just lower that stress. For sleep, this is a great one. You're going to be sleeping in so many different places on furlough. Some things that we've found helpful is we have a white noise app on our phone, and everywhere in the world, my room sounds the same. Even on the airplane, I use headphones with the app, and that's really, really helpful. So getting some good headphones there, some good earplugs, eye mask for a light. We have one of those that has a little, I'll put a link in there, but it has a little piece of metal in the nose piece, and you can pinch it down. So even if you're on an airplane, it actually keeps the light from going in up next to your nose. I really hate all the little TV lights in hotel rooms, and so I have took about 8 inches of electrical tape and folded it in 1 inch size. And then anytime there's a little TV light or smoke detector that's there. I can put that over it. Helps me to sleep really well. Putting a
We do take it back off before we
We do
leave.
take it back off. Yeah, we do. Using the pants hangers to clip the blinds closed. That's a helpful one. Using a door stop for security or privacy.
I travel with this USB nightlight that we can put in the bathrooms and things like that because we sleep in so many different places. And when I wake up and it's pitch black, I usually cannot remember where I'm at in the middle of the night. And that actually induces panic. Like I start to kind of get afraid because I can't figure out where I'm at. And so Kyle graciously lets me have this little USB nightlight because, hey, I must be afraid of the dark. And we put it in the bathroom or wherever we're traveling so that I have like a point of reference that I know, oh, a bathroom's over that direction. Kind of silly, but it was quite important to me.
It works. And
Yeah.
it's really small. You just use a phone charger and then this little USB
Yeah.
light.
We also take regular magnesium to help with just calming ourselves down and sleeping. And here was my favorite one. So sometimes you're traveling, and if you're traveling in a car and you don't know the quality of the mattresses you'll be sleeping on. So we actually have a memory foam topper that can smush down and go in a duffel bag and look just like another bag of clothing. But if we get someplace and the mattress is hard for us to sleep on, like what or would be a challenge for us to sleep that way because we're not used to it, we can sneak on this little foam topper. Nobody has to know. We're not criticizing their mattress and try to get a better night's sleep. But that's kind of our little secret that we're now exposing to the world.
But you also want to use that alarmed app on your phone so the next morning you don't forget it on the bed. So
True.
I have
We
that
haven't forgot
set
it, but you're right. We
to
do.
on relentless the next morning to remind me of that.
We want it to go back with us.
Yep. I think just the last thing was just for those of you who are not as forward thinking and planning, it is really, really helpful to lower the stress to be planning as far out as possible for your churches. If you can find housing, you think through a vehicle. So that's not a last minute scramble to
No.
do that. If you know you're going to be doing it in advance, try to plan as far out in advance.
And just be gracious with yourself. I asked earlier for churches to be gracious with us and our kids, but also know that you're not going to have your best day every time you're out ministering in a church or with people when you're on the road constantly or maybe super tired. Find stuff to laugh about. Like my favorite furlough story, which I think we might do a whole podcast soon with just collecting furlough stories from missionaries. I think that'd be a lot of fun. But my favorite is, well, we were actually on pre-field. We were visiting a church. Now, Emily was a newborn. Abby was like, what, 2, maybe 3? 2 or 3? No, it was before we left for the field. So she was probably 2, talking. And we were in the church service. Kyle was preaching. And just a shout out to New Life Baptist Church in Michigan for actually still taking us on for support after this happened and still loving us as a family. So we're in the middle of the service, and Emily, who's practically a newborn, starts fussing. And so I jump up and I rush out of the service, not wanting to disrupt anything. And I kind of forget and leave my 2-year-old in the middle of the row by herself. And quite short after that, and just a little bit, out comes one of the deacons with Abby by the hand going, I think she needs you. Well, I found out what happened. After I left, she stood up on the chair in the middle of the service
As I'm preaching.
as Kyle's preaching and yells, Daddy, I have to go potty. And you're thinking,
where is my wife?
right. Oh my goodness. I was mortified in that moment. That was our first time at this church. But you know what? We look back at that and laugh now. We're not a perfect family. Things like that are going to happen. I'm going to have days that maybe I'm not, spot on and the friendliest person there, but I just need to give us all some grace that, as we submit our plans to God, as we roll with the bumps and the different things that throw us off kilter and the schedules that were perfect, that we get sick or the flu and everything falls apart, like that's okay. God can redeem that and use it. And our biggest goal on furlough is to be faithful to what he's called us to do. And even with all of these tricks and tips and scheduling apps, things can kind of fall apart. You can have a death in the family. You can have an emergency. Your kid could need something completely different than what you thought you were going to be able to provide on furlough. So I would just encourage everyone to hold all these plans loosely and really go after just what does God want me to do in this moment.
Yeah. And so, how do these things help? Two key things. One is these practices or practical things help so we don't actually have to carry as much of a physical weight of furlough. It's just not as weighty that way. It's not as stressful. And then also managing those proper expectations help us to not carry an emotional weight that we don't really need to be carrying. Even though we've touched on a lot of these things that can help, the biggest one still taking the time to make sure that you are staying in the word, because as you're bouncing around with lots of different scheduling, it can be difficult to push that or it can be easy to push that aside. So you're not getting enough time each day and sometimes each week just to refresh, having a Sabbath and making sure that you're building that into your schedule, having the margin for that, so that you're able to do that. So important to be able to stay refreshed and replenished so that we're taking time to wait upon the Lord, because God says he's going to strengthen us as we wait upon him. And so that's just so important to remember that as you go through your furlough time. And so it's been a real joy to be able to share some of these. I hope that some of these things will be beneficial to you as you plan or go through your furlough, or as you encourage a missionary that you know, to be able to help them and just to understand what challenges they may be facing as well as they go through their furlough. Well, that's all for this show, and we want to thank you again for spending your valuable time with us today.
If you enjoyed this episode, please consider taking just a moment and giving us a great review. Your review will help people find the podcast and allow these resources to encourage more people. If you took something valuable away from this episode, please share it with someone who would enjoy it.
If you'd like to find the show notes, blog posts, and free resources for ministry and leadership, as well as some information on my book, Overflowing, visit KyleFarran.com. That's KyleFarran.com. Hope to see you soon on a future podcast.